Oh, you know what's hitting end of life sooner than I thought it was?
What's that?
Windows 10. I didn't realize how old it is.
Windows 10 is hitting end of life as well. Hopefully, going away soon. Yeah.
Yes, that one kind of caught me because someone was asking. I don't remember how it was. We're starting our podcast really random today.
Yeah.
Someone was asking me like, what are my thoughts on Windows 10 versus Windows 11? In terms of upgrading, they're still all running Windows 10. I was like, I mean, there's some security benefits to 11, but there's nothing mind blowing that I was aware of if your users are comfortable with 10. But then we went and looked up end of life, and it's like 2025. It's like 2 years from now. Windows 10 hits end of life.
Yes. October 14th, 2025 for Home and Pro.
Yeah. So, side note, to kick off the podcast, Windows 10 is expiring. With that, what else do you want to talk about, Scott?
That's more like, hey, folks, get out there and go upgrade your Windows 7 devices. It's time, right? Like all those ATMs, time to get them done. But yeah, I guess that one's neither here nor there. Let's see.
Running Windows 7? I hope not.
There are tons of
Windows 7 around. I know there's tons of them around.
I don't have a Windows 7 place around, but there are definitely tons of them that are around. CE is still very prevalent. Like it's tough, right? Once you're out there and in the quote unquote real world with whatever happens to be going on there. So yeah, it is what it is.
It is indeed. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. So I want to call this one out really quick. It's an ongoing series of webinars through our developer division, through DevDiv at Microsoft, which is called Learn Live. And Learn Live is an opportunity to have folks from engineering, be that maybe the PM side or the software developer side, arguably the product group, come in and talk to you about a given kind of service area and set of capabilities within a bunch of different things within Azure, within Microsoft 365. MVPs are invited as presenters as well. And what it is a I'll call it like a semi-structured learning session to take an hour to an hour and a half and take an audience end to end through a Give and Learn module. So I've done 2 of these in the past 2 weeks. I did one 2 weeks ago with one of my coworkers, Carl, and we talked about object storage and disk storage and getting started with files. And then I did one yesterday on multi-protocol access in object storage, where another one of my peers, Vishnu, and I went through and we talked about and demoed a bunch of different scenarios. So things like being able to write over the blob endpoint and be able to read over DFS and just say, like, do a select out of a CSV or a Parquet file. How do you maybe upload files over SFTP and read them over NFS, like all those kinds of things. So there's a bunch of ones that we're doing for storage across object storage, files, disks. We've got a session next week on files and file sync, and then in early March, we're going to have one on storage diagnostics. But there's a whole bunch of things just out there in the series. So if folks are more inclined to learn via video, which I know a bunch of people are, and you want to either attend the sessions live, they're streamed to both Twitch and YouTube, and you can come in, you can ask questions, you'll get them answered in real time, all that good kind of stuff, or you can just go back and watch previous sessions as well. So I'll include links in the show notes to kind of an overarching article on Learn Live and kind of what it is. And then that'll have links to a bunch of different learning paths within it. So the way I got exposed to this was through the Azure Core IaaS Study Hall Learn Path, which is just kind of covering all the IaaS services inside of Azure Core. And, storage got lumped in there because even though we're like primarily a PaaS service, we drive a lot of IaaS workloads. Like they just build out on top of us. So it's a cool little nifty thing. A great way to, if you've just got an hour and you want to sit back and participate in a live stream, maybe go take a look at the schedule and see if it works for you.
Got it. So yours are all under, I was looking for yours on there, but they're all under that IaaS Core Study Hall.
Yeah, all the ones that I did are under there, but there's a bunch of different ones. They just did a whole series on AKS. There's a separate learning path on Bicep and all the cool things that are going on there. And like I said, you don't have to attend live or anything. They're also published out over on YouTube on the Microsoft Developer Channel. There's a whole playlist of all the Learn Live sessions that have happened already. And then pretty much once I've been super impressed by like the production of them, because the sessions that I've done, at least the last two that I did, by the time I was done and had closed with the producer, they were already live on YouTube and ready to go, like added to the playlist and just out there and up and running, which is kind of cool.
Wow. Maybe we need to hire those Microsoft producers for our podcast.
Maybe. Probably can't afford
We're
them.
not quite that fast.
Yeah.
Probably not.
For free podcast, I'm not sure that we can afford them. But just wanted to call it out. Like I said, for those folks who are always out there looking for new learning opportunities.
Yeah, well, and there's some good stuff in here. Like you said, there's some Cosmos DB, the Bicep stuff, some hybrid infrastructure, machine learning modules, and R, Azure Live on Demand, Fast Track stuff. Yeah, cool. I might have to go watch some of these because I don't see enough of you, Scott. I want to go watch you on a webinar.
I was a little hurt. I was pixel peeping, the guest list, at least for folks who had signed up on LinkedIn, and I saw your name on there. And then, we hopped on today and you said, oops, I didn't do that. I'm like, come on, Ben, what are you doing?
You know what? I think I saw it on my phone and I signed up, and then I never added the meeting invite to my calendar. Like, that's the problem with signing up for those on LinkedIn, is I forget to go add them to the calendar, and then by the time I realize it was too late.
Yeah, it happens. That's
next
okay.
one. You'll have to give me a heads up, Scott, when you do another one. Do you have another one that you have planned coming up or not?
I don't have another one that I am planning on speaking for. I think the next one that I'm going to participate in is on March 2nd. We're doing a session on storage diagnostics. So I think I might try and sneak my way in and be the moderator for the chat on that one, just so I can kind of participate with the audience still and pop links in and answer questions and things like that while the presenters are going.
Ooh, you're going to have to let me know. I could have some fun in the chat with that one.
Yeah, because it's not like you can't just ask me the questions anytime. Like, you got my phone number. Come on.
Exactly. Well, and those you actually have to approve the questions, don't you? They don't just show up live. I have to ask it, and then you have to approve it and publish it.
Yeah, I don't know how it goes. It might be a little loose since it's all going on Twitch, but and YouTube, but I don't know. So I was kind of interested in seeing how the production side on that stuff went. But that is out there and kicking around. So that's my first one. What do you got for us today?
Very cool. So I have a new one that I got invited to, and you didn't. Neither. No, I'm just kidding. I got to make fun of you when I actually get something that you don't, especially in the Microsoft land. I got access to the new Bing. So Microsoft had their announcement, I believe it was Tuesday, was it? They announced all the adding OpenAI, integrating it in with different services. I saw there was an article about maybe some future integrations coming to the Office apps. But the day they announced it, Tuesday, they went live with a new version of Bing.com. And yes, make fun of me as much as you want to. I use Bing for most of my searches as opposed to Google.
I don't know how you do it. But
Well, so maybe I've used it long enough that it's actually gotten good. I tend to find everything that I need to right away, and I'm wondering if part of it is that usually everything I need starts with Microsoft 365 or Azure, and it might be a little biased towards those. But as part of it now, they have a chat, and I can go into the new Bing and ask Bing anything similar to how you would carry on conversations with ChatGPT. Um, so there is a wait list right now. I have no idea how or when they're letting different people in, but I have seen a fair amount of people on Twitter saying, I got in already. So it seems like they're opening it up pretty quickly. That being said, I don't think you said you had gotten your invite yet.
It's a little weird. So today you go and kind of request access. It requires an MSA. It's not available for org IDs from at least the intake form that I filled out. So that might be stopping some folks, right? If you don't have an MSA for whatever reason. I would argue that all of us should at this point, especially if you're listening to this podcast. But to each their own. And then it's a gated kind of preview to get folks in. So I'm still using the free ChatGPT on the side.
Okay.
I found a little client for Mac OS and Windows that I've been using, which is kind of sort of like a PWA, but not quite. It adds in a little bit of functionality for giving you help on your prompts that you're putting in. Like it has a set of like known prompts and these will hopefully lead to these types of outcomes. So I've been using that and going along with it, and I'm still in the free tier. It gets overloaded from time to time, but it really is a nifty service. Like if nobody's gotten hands on with it, I recommend just going and signing up for a free account. And you might have some frustrations around throttling or availability, but it's pretty cool.
It really is. Here you go, Scott. I just asked the new Bing about you and what it thought about you. And I will post its response.
I don't even want to know.
Chat. It was actually rather impressive. So for those of you that are not part of Discord, it searched for you, and then it went and found like 3 different Scott Hogues and asked me which one I was interested in. And I told it more about you, and then it went on and told me all about you, including that you are a co-host of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast and where you live, and that you're a senior program manager at Azure Storage, and you are knowledgeable about the different storage options that are available in Azure Storage, such as blobs, files, tables, and queues.
So that is an interesting response that it gave back. I'm pretty sure I can guess where it actually pulled the lines from. It's an amalgamation of things. It's pulling from LinkedIn. I have an about.me page, which has some of that information in it. And then it has some stuff about being an author as well, which very well could be pulling from Amazon or some of the books that are actually published out there. But so it's pretty it's pretty close.
It is. Well, and this is interesting. So, and there's a Business Insider article out there as well, where they did a comparison of ChatGPT versus the Bing, and they do pros and cons and all that. But one thing they noted, and if you kind of zoom in on that screenshot or once you get to play with it, they give you references to where it pulled it all from. So you can actually go click down at the bottom, and it looks like the author one came from books.google.com. So it has all those different references that you can go in and click on and look at. So as opposed to ChatGPT, where it's just kind of, here's all the information, we don't really know where it all came up with. This does give you references to the website and where the information came from, if you want to go out to it and look more at the website.
Yeah, it's a little more kind of Wikipedia-ish, just giving you links to all the, having those embedded, I guess, footnotes in there, footnote 1, footnote 2, footnote 3 kind of thing.
Yep. And it has like 5 footnotes for you, but it's some of the Business Insider ones, like it asked about finding itineraries or flights for vacation, and I think part of it, the advantage you get with some of this is some of how Bing is tied into other things is it was actually able to spit back like ticket prices for different airlines and what websites you should go to find the cheapest plane ticket prices and all of that. And that was one of the comparisons that Business Insider made was the differences when essentially some of the, I guess, additional information maybe Bing has access to as a search engine that it was pulling in versus ChatGPT.
Yeah, it has to be a different, or an augmented data set that's a little bit different than what ChatGPT has, since ChatGPT has been publicly stated that they really don't try and they try and block kind of current information in there. So, they often talk about like we've ingested things up to 2021, but they don't want it to turn into a current state disinformation machine because it can already be a past state disinformation machine depending on what it's ingesting, what it has going on. But that doesn't necessarily work for a search context where you might want to see something that was published yesterday or an hour ago, breaking news kind of thing, and be able to have that come through. Yeah, it's super nifty. I don't know if you've ever tried this out, but on pure ChatGPT, I was doing something a couple weeks ago where I was getting ready to do the multi-protocol session, and I wanted to see if I could put together a sample using our SDKs for storage to be able to do that. So using like our Blob SDK and our Data Lake SDK. And, I'm a developer in a former life, but I was never very good at it. And for me to like get bootstrapped on a new SDK today takes me a while just because it's been so long since I've been hands-on with .NET or Java or C# or anything like that. And so I actually went to ChatGPT and I kind of told it what I was doing. And I said, hey, I want to use these SDKs. Like I want you to use the Blob SDK for Azure Storage, the most current version of it. And I want you to write me a function that can upload a file from a local directory and push that into a dynamically determined container in Azure Storage. So boom, it spit that out for me. And then I said, okay, now write me one that can use our Data Lake SDK to read a file that was, uploaded to this location. Then it spit that out. And then I just said, okay, now put them both together and do that. And then it kind of takes them and it jams them together all in just like a single like program.cs, right? Slams it all together and gets it in there. And you just go back and forth and you iterate it on it. You say like, okay, so I want it to, have a dynamic input as an argument on the command line for just enumerating a folder of files. Okay, go figure that out for me, and do all that stuff. It actually worked. I only had to change two things in the code that it put through, and it wasn't even something that it did wrong. It was something where I had said, upload this over the Blob endpoint, and it had chosen the DFS endpoint, so I just had to swap Blob for DFS, and it did it for me. Like it was really a crazy kind of copy pasta exercise of saying, hey, put this together for me, and just me taking it over, putting it in VS Code and pasting it in and saying, go compile and let's see what you do. And it actually worked. Like, and granted, super simple scenario. Could I have put it together myself and gone out to the docs and said, let me go to the Blob docs and the SDK for that, and then, copy and paste from section to section to section and figure that out? Like, yeah, I could have done all that, but this was 15 minutes of time, which, arguably would have taken me hours to go figure out all the stuff and hammer my head against it and go, how does this work?
Yeah. That's interesting. I have not done anything, that extensive with it yet. I've done a couple where it's like, go write me a PowerShell script to do this, just because I wanted to see what it would come back with. And then I've never taken it far enough to iterate on it. I did some stuff with Azure AD. I also like to write me a script to go get some Azure AD users or something. And mine did get some of the commandlets wrong. It grabbed like the native AD commandlets, not the Azure AD one. So So I ended up with like get AD user instead of get Azure AD user in there. So I think it's interesting. To your point, if you've made a couple tweaks too about things, is I feel like you still want to have at least some type of knowledge about what you're writing, because it's not always going to be 100% right. But it gets you a good baseline a whole lot quicker sometimes.
Yeah,
For a good place
it was. I think it's my first exposure to it. Like, I haven't spent a ton of time playing around with Copilot or anything like that. But it makes me want to get more hands-on with Copilot and some of those other things, because there's enough time that I am in a terminal, be it PowerShell, Bash, CSH, whatever it happens to be, that I can always use kind of just little quick hints and pointers to get me going in the right direction.
Yeah, so funny you should mention Copilot. I played with Copilot a little bit today. I had seen some stuff. Someone actually brought it up today and said, yeah, I started paying for Copilot to help me with some things. So I went and signed up for Copilot, and there is I think it's a 60-day trial of Copilot. And then they do have a Copilot VS Code integration.
They do, indeed.
They do. So here, I can post this in Discord as well for those. We'll put it in the show notes. Like JavaScript, it was crazy. They gave some examples. So I did one of the examples of JavaScript just because I knew it would work. But then I was like, okay, we're great with JavaScript. How well would it do with PowerShell? It wasn't quite as fluid in terms of like putting the function in there and then it spit out the whole function. PowerShell, I ended up having to go line by line, where I put in the function, did what I wanted to, but then it just gave me one line after the other. So I hit like tab, 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 tab 5 or 6 times all the way through, and it wrote an entire function for me, without ever typing anything more than the name of the function. So it's one I kind of want to play with too, because while I don't do all the development stuff, if it can, again, serve as an assistant to even give me ideas or keep me from looking up, oh, I forgot how to do this, or what this particular command letter, this particular, like this one, it was throwing in things around formatting dates and strings and all of that. It was just kind of handy to have it there.
Yeah, I think it's more the prompt kind of thing, and used the right way, it's pretty nifty. And it's really hard to, I think, distill the value of some of these things, and honestly, whether there is value there for folks, because it's very situational, and it does depend on what you're trying to get out of it and what you're trying to do with it. So, if any of this stuff sounds interesting, it's one of those things where my guidance would be go sign up for an account and try it out, because the best way you're going to learn about it is by getting hands-on with it for yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And I do like the Copilot trial. I was surprised. It's a 60-day trial, so it's more than enough time to really get hands-on with it and play with it. There was something else. I was going to say, maybe we should start trying this for the podcast, Scott. Another interesting one I've seen is summarize all this stuff for me. Like, if we could somehow take all of the articles that we referenced in the podcast and say, write our show notes for us. Or I've seen people do the other thing, take a big long post, and they're like, give me the summary of what this blog post is. And it gives a paragraph about what these 10 or 15 paragraphs are in a blog post.
That works surprisingly well too. I did that the other day. There's a Apple website and podcast I listen to called Six Colors, which Jason Snell does. And one of the things he does is he puts together kind of a recap of the entire earnings call for Apple and things like that. And I'm an Apple shareholder, so I'm always interested in just kind of listening and hearing how things are going. And, they're a FAANG company, and there's weird stuff going on at FAANG companies. So it's like, let's give it a listen. So I just took his article on, hey, here's everything that happened. And then even though his article is a summary of the earnings call, it's even better to go in and say, hey, take this summary of a summary and distill it down for me. And you can do that. You just take the entire thing and you copy it and paste it. It could be like a 40-page PDF. I've seen people do this too. You take like a research PDF and the thing is 40 pages, 60 pages. You say, hey, there's a PDF at this URL. Go summarize it for me. And it'll just figure it out and spit it back for you, which is, again, really, really cool stuff.
Very cool. All right. So do we have time for one more news announcement?
Oh, we always have time. I mean, it's your show, but
it is not the show.
You know, you let me know what you want to do, and
we need to help you get this out of your head that it's my show. It is our show, Scott.
No,
we're a team.
It's your show, and you know, you're always talking about teams, so I bet you're going to talk about teams again. Thinking.
Probably, but I don't know which one. There's two of them we could talk about.
Which one is the messiest?
Talk about. Oh, you're going to back me into this one. So Teams free then, if you want the messiest one. This is one I saw kind of the article. This does not appear to be one that was necessarily widely published for everybody to see. But apparently Teams free is changing to a new Teams free that's not the same as the old Teams free.
Well, so let's take a step back and clarify here. When you say Teams free, are you referring to business Teams free or to personal Teams free? Because now we've got, you know, all those different things that happen there too.
So this is, I was going back, this is Teams free. This is turning into Teams free Classic. This was business Teams free, wasn't it?
Yes.
I believe. Yes. This was business Teams free, which I'd have to go look through all my Teams SKUs. Like there was the Teams, is this the same as the Teams exploratory Teams? Is there a different Teams free?
I don't actually remember. The way I've seen everything framed, and I've never used this one, which is why I was a little confused. I was like, well, I have Teams Personal, and I don't use it because it's useless. And since I don't use Teams Personal because it's useless, I just use my regular Teams org ID, which I've got several of. You know, so depending on what's going on, like I just use one of those. And I didn't even know that this was out here. Like if it was an SMB SKU, it was only available to, you know, basic plan customers or something like that. Like I have no idea.
So yeah, this kind of is all coming about with the advent of Teams Premium. Teams Premium is just making Teams, I don't, there's way too many teams in here. There's some messy things going on with this Teams Premium. So this is, I truth be told, I don't know what the original SKU is, and it doesn't really say if this is that Teams, because I know there's a Teams Exploratory that I see a lot. But needless to say, if you're doing the current version of Teams Free, or if you've been on Teams Free for any period of time, this is going to transition to Teams Free Classic on April 12th of 2023. So you don't have a lot of time. 2 months, 3 months, I guess. No, 2 months. Almost 2 months from today to sign up for the new version of Teams Free. However, this is like, I wouldn't even call it a brand new SKU. It's like a brand new version, because if you go from Teams Free Classic to the new version of Teams Free, you're going to lose all of your data. Whatever you've been doing in Teams Free is not going to transition from Teams Free Classic to Teams Free V Next. And if you want to keep your data that you've been doing in Teams free, you need to upgrade to Team Essentials for $4 per user per month. This just seemed kind of bizarre. And I don't, yeah, it seems kind of bizarre.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? Like, I don't like it. If I was on Teams free, I'd be upset that I'm just going to lose my data for no reason, even though I stay on Teams free. On the flip side, I also take the stance that if I'm getting something for free, I shouldn't expect anything out of it. I'm getting something for free. Web parts, business software, whatever it is that I've started using, I go into it with the expectation that if I want something that has any type of guarantees around it, I should go pay for the paid version of it and not expect anything from the free version.
Yes, I'm very much the same. Yeah, like, and quality software and services are worth paying for.
Yes, but if you're on free, this is absolutely something to be aware of, especially if you do have data you want to keep, that maybe now is the time to start paying for Teams free. And $4 per user per month, it's not horrible. This is probably going to be geared more towards small businesses. Again, it's an added expense. But if you want to have some type of data retention, you probably should just go pay for Teams. But a bit unfortunate.
Get on one of those basic plans.
Yeah, just a little unfortunate that they don't carry your data forward. To me, that would have been more of an act of goodwill from Microsoft than something I necessarily would have expected. Yeah, I got nothing else on that one. Just kind of an interesting tidbit, but if you are that free version, something you should absolutely go pay attention to.
All right. What else is out there? Anything, or you want to call it a day?
Anything else? So, what else did we have on our list? I mean, we could talk about this one. I've seen this one. Do you want to talk about MMR on AVD?
We can. I'm interested. Yes, I am interested in. Yeah, let's close on this one. And I'm keenly interested in others' feedback on this particular feature, because I feel like it doesn't work for me. And I am on AVD that this is all deployed on, and I just don't know if it's a client thing. Like, is it because I'm on Mac and the Mac version of remote desktop? Am I not in the right type of thing? So yeah, why don't you kick us off and like kind of talk about what MMR is and then what's been going on and what's been happening there.
So MMR, and I'm curious if you have some other thoughts on this as well. MMR is Multimedia Redirection for Azure Virtual Desktop, for a virtual desktop environment where you want some of that smoother playback. This in particular is video playback, and it does only support certain sites. So video playback while viewing videos and this is specific to the browser too. So remoted into Azure Virtual Desktop in a browser, not using the client, and watching videos on a website. Some of the ones that they listed are YouTube, Wall Street News, Teams live events. And then they have a link to go look at all the websites that work with this multimedia redirection. But it should help with just a smooth playback. I know a lot of times I've tried watching videos. I've even tried playing some games every once in a while in a virtual desktop environment. And it's usually not smooth. You get lags, you get jerks, it looks jittery, it looks like you have a bad internet connection. So this has been in preview. This is the general availability announcement on February 7 of 2023, where this is now supported in Chrome and Edge for Windows. So it does specifically say Windows, not Mac. And maybe that's part of our problem. But even in addition to MMR, and I'm curious to what you have to think, Scott, is Personally, I've tried doing like Teams video calls and screen shares and all of that over a remote desktop connection, which similar technology should leverage some of that same benefit to get like a smooth video call and audio calls and all of that over virtual desktop sessions. I have talked to people that say, yeah, it works great. I do it all the time. I have never had a great experience with any multimedia calls, videos, anything working over my remote desktop connections.
No, I avoid it 100%. Like it straight up does not work. It's janky enough for a microphone, let alone pulling remote video in. I can spend half my day on my Mac here, depending on what's going on and what I'm testing and what I'm doing. But I've got my Windows PC right next to me, and I'll remote desktop over to that thing all day. I keep just a remote an RDP window up over there, and it's horrible. It's not great, and I'm just going through like a gigabit switch that's right next to me. So I don't know. So I was reading through some of the MMR announcements, and it does only work on Windows desktop clients, version 1.2.3916 or later.
So that could be our problem with MMR. And the Teams calls, maybe it's just a me problem. Maybe I have something janky on my laptop around Teams calls. I wonder what it is about Windows. This would be interesting. So if there's anybody listening that like has detailed technical insight into MMR, like how does this work from the aspect of only certain websites are supported, as well as only certain browsers, in addition to certain versions of, certain versions of Windows? Yeah. Certain versions of remote desktop clients for Windows.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, what is going on in the background with all of these working together that there's so many restrictions around it? I don't know if it's video codecs or something in the website. This was an interesting one. And it did go live too. It also hit general availability if you're using Windows 365. Again, under the covers, Windows 365 Cloud PC, AVD, exact same technology as my speculation, what it appears under the covers. So it's not surprising that they both hit GA on the same day or a day apart. They actually hit it. Well, the blog posts went live a day apart. One on the 7th, one on the 8th of February.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird one to me. Maybe I need to just go spend some more time on Windows and try it out and see what happens.
Yeah, maybe we should do this on the To the Cloud. We can go play someday on YouTube, Scott. We can add this to our list of YouTube things to do. Go play with MMR, AVD, Teams calls, all of the above through remote desktop sessions, and see what we can get to the bottom of.
Yeah, let's have a play around with some Edge and Chrome extensions and group policy and Visual C++ redistributable downloads, and we'll see if we get it all working.
Can't believe C++ redistributable download is still a thing. That's been around for like as long as I've been working on computers.
Yes, it is a requirement of MMR that you have the latest C++ redistributable installed.
What is in C++ redistributable? What is that?
Redistributable C++. So it's a couple different things. It's runtimes for C and C++. So it's the Microsoft C and Microsoft VC runtime libraries are inside of that. So those runtimes are dependencies for a whole bunch of applications that are built out on top of it, both first party from Microsoft and third party from vendors. So that's why it's in the redistributable package. Like a vendor who takes a dependency on one of those libraries can ship the installer as a part of their installer and get it
Okay.
out there and get it to where it needs to be. Yeah. And then there's redistributables for ARM64, x86, x64.
For
All the kind of stuff that you didn't want to know, but I will put a link to in the show notes to some background on that as well, in case anybody's interested.
Redistributable. All right. Sounds good. Well, that's got, we can probably wrap up for the day. Go enjoy. I think it's supposed to be a rainy weekend. Go enjoy your weekend regardless. Don't work too late on a Friday. And we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Ben.